Hello and welcome to PolyInnovator. Today we are talking about the new PolyInnovation Operating System, which is based in notion.so. It is a tool that's an all-in-one productivity tool. You can do Kanban boards, all kinds of different stuff in Notion. I'm using that system in order to create this Life OS or productivity suite, I guess you could say, for your life. And I've been making this over the past few years. I recently released the input side of it, which was the Modular Degree. And at some point here soon, I'm going to be doing the output as well. Although both the input and output templates can be found in the PIOS main template. It's 3 different templates: input, output, holistic. And I wanted to create this post, this PolyInContent episode, around the PIOS because there's a lot of stuff going around with it, and I wanted to explain what some of those are. The PIOS is meant to change how we manage our multidisciplinary lives at every level. And regardless if you're a specialist or a generalist, you can use this tool. And it's one of those things where there's a lot of different other systems out there for Notion. There's even some other tools too. But I suggest Notion because there's a lot of changes you can make to it. You can change it down to a very fine, narrow level. It's quite a lot like Legos, to be honest. And the PolyInContent series that I create was part of the reason why I got into Notion, because I was trying to try 100 different productivity tools, task management tools, product management tools, all these different tools to find a system that allowed me to have multiple layers of abstraction. I didn't want to just plan out my content. I also wanted to plan out my habits and my life and everything that goes in between. And so what I found was I could do this macro and micro, right? You have the big picture and small picture. Those 2 layers weren't quite enough. You needed to have a little bit more nuance than that. Eventually, I found the terminology for a lot of scientific scaling: Supra, macro, meso, micro, nano, Pico. And that's going from big down to small. And those are what I use in order to explain the layers of our lives each year. So Supra is yearly, so that way you can keep track of what happened last year and what's going to be happening this year. You can plan ahead. You have macro and quarterly, so you can keep track of your alignment, or your tasks and goals that you're doing, aligning with your yearly vision, let alone decade vision. Meso monthly, now each month is generally going to have some sort of goal that you're trying to work towards. And so this month I'm working on this PIOS, for example. And then micro weekly. What are the weekly things that you want to get accomplished? It might take a few days to get done, but you can kind of plan on Sundays or whenever your week starts for you. And you can be, okay, this is what I'm going to be tracking my habits and organizing my systems for the week ahead. Then we get to the nano daily. And this one's a bit more thicker than some of the other layers, actually, because this is where the input and output flow is. So your modular degree and content production system, or bullet journaling if you want to be private. But either way, input and output, or input and output, and then those break down into tasks that you can do, and that is the Pico and hourly level. So honestly, it makes a lot of sense to each level being their own thing and allowing for this cohesion between different layers. For those who don't know me, I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and it's my mission to innovate many fields throughout my life. And in order to do that, I have to track what those fields are, how much I've actually worked into those fields, what I've been doing in those fields, and that is the whole point of this system, PolyInContent episode that you're listening or watching right now, and probably reading the post as well. The cool thing about this PolyInContent series is that every blog post is slightly different, not slightly different, usually pretty different, than the video and podcast correspondence as well. The audio is just cut out of the video, so whatever you're listening to right now, I was recording with a video in mind, but I tried to keep the audio in mind as well. So what is a personal knowledge system? Well, there's this whole concept called the second brain that Tiago Forte came up with. And while I quite like that idea, having the second brain where you can just send all the stuff that you don't need to have consciously right now away, let it sit on the slow burner, which honestly has helped me out a lot. Having that just philosophy in my life, there's been a lot of projects or ideas that I wanted to work on. And in the past, I probably would just work on them right away. But now with this whole system, I can just dump them, let them sit there, and over time, I'm adding more to it. I find a link, I add to it, and eventually when I am ready to actually approach it, I have all these different resources or ideas all listed down, allowing me to actually do a much better endeavor from that in the first place. A personal acknowledgement says a personal knowledge system is great, but it's not helpful if you don't use it. And so with all these different tools out there, Second Brain, PIOS fillers and vaults, they're great. And sometimes they'll be monumental for certain people. But if you find them, you like them, you download them, duplicate them, whatever you want to term you want to use, but then you don't actually use them, then what's the point? And while I have immense respect for a lot of these other creators, and I actually share links to them all the time, including in the blog post too, where like even though they're technically their systems are competitors to my system, if that system works better for you, that's the point. I want to find what works best for you. I created this one to fit more multidisciplinary people. Maybe you want a very specific one, more nuanced or specialist-centered system. So go to them, test them out, compare them, and whatever one works in the end, that's what works. So one thing I really love is August Bradley's channel. He has a lot of great Notion videos, and so I spent a lot of time watching most of his videos. He has his own system there to PIOS filters and vaults. There's also the Second Brain one. There's also Get Things Done too. However, besides Bradley's system, most of the other systems were made before Notion was a thing, and so they were implemented into Notion, whereas Bradley's and my systems were built with Notion in mind. So I used to call the PIOS the Personal PolyInnovation System because PolyInnovator is a matter of being a polymath of innovation, right? Polymath being someone with many deep level knowledge areas of learning, and innovator being someone who does these changes. They're changing different endeavors or fields and that kind of thing. PolyInnovation is changing many areas of your life, and or changing many different areas, and then the personal part of it being of your life. But there was a disconnect on how the naming convention really impacted people. I explained it just fine just now, but even then you might not have resonated with it. And so I caught this whole idea of the PolyInnovation Operating System was a bit more specific on what you could do with it. It is an operating system for your life. It's an OS to organize every aspect of your life. So this is the basic system here. Now, you can notice how I have a few different icons right here that are just a bit extra. Those aren't usually there. So it's usually just a task database, which has a couple different viewings, and then I have the input and output. Now, lately, I've been messing around with the Modular Degree template so much that I actually just got rid of the database that I had here. But usually I would have something here like a task list or a simple list view of a database in order to track, okay, what do I want to work on in this week or something like that. So each week or month I would go into the mod degree and choose what I need to focus on this coming time. And if I feel like what I'm learning right now is not quite interesting and I just need to change up the pace, that kind of thing, you can go in there and change at any point. That's the whole point of being modular. But I think where a lot of people are going to be more interested in is this content ecosystem here, because that is what I spent also a lot of time on as well, because I have a lot of different kinds of content. I have a lot of different series, a lot of different kinds of content, written, audio, and video, not to mention combination episodes like the one you're watching right now, the PolyInContent, and then I also have the microblogs and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And so being able to keep track of all of it in one database was something that I actually kind of fought for a while. I had a separate database for the PolyInContent, a separate database for videos, and separate database for podcasts. And eventually I realized, I really would like to see it all into one place. And it was because of this calendar view that I actually merged all those into different ones. You can actually just drop down, and this is just a screenshot, but you can drop down and view just like, okay, what kind of content do I want to see this week or whatever. And then you can put all of them into a certain date. And so whatever, like let's say every Monday I'm doing new LinkedIn articles, on Mondays I can have it all there. But then on Thursdays I do PolyIncontent episodes or something like that. Or like Wednesday and Thursday are the days I send out my newsletter. Those always get sent on those days, but I want to be able to see them and see whatever kind of content I can create as well. Even creating this post took me a little bit longer than I expected because I would kind of just drag it to the next day. So there's a procrastination aspect behind it too. Now, I think another big point to be made is the actual system here. And so what this is that those layers I was mentioning earlier, the Supra all the way down to Pico. And you literally click just one of these and it brings you into that system. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a page here for you. So this is the template that you could duplicate. I managed to get all of my personal information out of it, which if you find anything, let me know, please. I accidentally had a database view that was linked to my database instead of the template that was on this particular one. That's just a learning curve of setting out these different systems. So I have all of the different layers at the top here. We do have a couple extra ones over here, notes how to use. Honestly, they're not really that detailed notes. More of the actual details are on each layer. So when you click into them, there might be a little call out or section that'll say, this is how you use that. The archives actually is pretty interesting because I ended up just starting to archive my entire system every once in a while. Maybe it probably would have been better for me to export it and then just import the zip file, but I was literally just copying the whole system and pasting it into the year. That wasn't very wise because then it slowed down my Notion a little bit, and then it also made things a little bit more complicated for search. But it is helpful to keep track of different versions of your system because sometimes you're going to be changing things. One thing I should mention right now, actually, is that when you make changes to your dashboard, don't do them on your main dashboard. And so what this idea was is like you have your main HQ dashboard that you're going to be using on a daily basis, right? But then you have a second one that you're experimenting with. You copy the format that you have already into that second one, and then you can change it as much as you want, but you aren't making permanent changes to your actual dashboard you're using until you decide, okay, I like this version, I'm going to replace my main one. But you want to have that playground because sometimes you'll make changes and it really messes up your dashboard. It only happened to me a few times towards the beginning first year and a half of me using Notion, because eventually the changes I made were so micro. But when you're doing some big changes in the beginning, which you're going to be doing when you duplicate this database, you want to change it to what you need, format it to what you need. You want to have a different separation there. Also, let's go through each layer. All right, yearly. So this one's interesting because I actually had two different templates when it came to the previous year and the coming year, but then I ended up merging them together. And so this year, when I finally got around to doing my manifesto, I ended up merging them towards the late end of the year. So in each one, you can add a template. This is what it looks like. You find a moment that you're grateful for. The next part are the different quarterly reviews. So you want to go in here each quarter and view these different sections here. 4 pillars, meaning your mind, body, spirit, emotions, as well as your ikigai. Those areas of your life, what are your actions being like for those areas? And you go into that section and it's like, okay, I've been working towards my body goals. I haven't been working too much about my spiritual goals. And you put that in there. You have to be honest with yourself because you'll want to be able to have that honesty when you're going back looking through in the future. Like, okay, well, in the first quarter, I didn't really work on that particular development. I need to work on that better the second quarter or the next year, that kind of thing. Modular Degree, you list out a few things that you learned in that quarter. It's a whole 3-month pattern there. You want to make sure you actually have spent a decent amount of time learning something. Habit check. Honestly, I could do a little bit better myself with this, but habits are just doing things like exercise, and they kind of relate to your 4 pillars a bit. Content and bullet journal. So you have input here, output here. What are you doing each month when you're learning something new or practicing this new habit? Are you actually creating something with it? Again, with like the whole 4 pillars thing, you have the ikigai check. Are you doing what you love? Are you doing what you're good at? Are you doing something that the world needs? Or are you doing stuff to just get paid? And you just check off. And this goes for the whole year, but it's and you can honestly just copy it if you want to do it for each quarter too. But I think it's a good way to kind of keep track of each year. Are you doing the things that are making you happy? Are you doing things that the world needs? And like, it's a very powerful checkbox, but it's so simple at the same time. This is something I think this is very important. We need to get out of our comfort zone. We need to push ourselves beyond our limits. I'm a very didactic person, but I'm also very talkative to people. I love talking to people just about them. I don't have to teach them stuff. And yet I have a hard time approaching some people sometimes. And it's like, I need to get out of that comfort zone and talk to those people who might be outside of my range of scope. How well did I accomplish goals and projects? You link your database there. And then what is the ideal theme for next year? So that was all the previous year. Now you're planning out the next year. So what's the ideal theme? Well, for me, it was actually going to be PolyInnovator gaming, which now it honestly might be the game productions because I've been focusing on this game development lately, but it's a whole other thing I'll talk about in the now page update. What are your goals? This links to your goal database. It is template. This is the templates on the one you can download right here. Projects, once again, in that same thing, what phase you're in. So each one of these we'll talk about once we get to that layer, but each one of these are all linked to that particular layer. And this is kind of like separate sizes, if you will. And then that's it. That's literally the whole super level. And I think that's a very complicated system, but also a very simple system at the same time. You just have to go around and make yourself do it. Now, this layer doesn't really have anything for you to fill out, but it is something that helps you with the quarterly check. I think I need to make some way to view what you put in the super layer into this layer. So I'm not sure how to really go about doing that just yet, because there's a few ways of doing it. I'm not sure which one will be the best. But keeping track of your vocation, profession, passion, vision, mind, body, spirit, and emotions. I felt that even though these are kind of similar in nature, they still have their own separate place. So that's why I have all 8 here. This is one of those sections where you're going to have to probably edit it to your liking, because I have a basic outline here, but not much to it. Whereas the Supra, I have an actual template that you can use. Same with the goals, projects, and phases. So I'm going to turn on the camera here again, actually. I really love this section because this is what I've spent a lot of time working on myself, and I've organized PolyInnovator into different phases. And ironically, and this is perfect for this, perfect example, phases change. Your interests change. Even if you're neurotypical and not multidisciplinary, like you're just a specialist, your interests don't change very often, your interests are still going to change when it comes to your hobbies, your habits, what you're interested in over time. And then if you are maybe ADHD, or perhaps you are polymathic, you're going to have new interest every week, if not every month, and stuff, that kind of thing. And so your phases you need to keep track of what you're interested in over time. And a phase isn't necessarily, from point A to point B. You may stop in the middle of it, do another phase or two for a couple years, and then go back to that first phase, which is what I did. And I'll explain in a moment here, because it's one of those things where, I'm getting too excited about it. You want to keep track of what you're doing towards that phase, towards that goal, towards that knowledge area. Your goals and projects, and thereby tasks as well, all fall into your phases. Your tasks fall into goals and projects, usually to projects, but even some goals could have some tasks too. Like, for example, one of my goals is to post every day for 45 days or something like that. Post like TikToks or something like that for 45 days. And so that can mean a task every day is to post however many TikToks I set on the goal. And so that's one example. But then for projects are a bit bigger in scope. You might have multiple tasks for that project to get it done. So you really only want to have like 3 goals per year, but you have 3 goals, and this is per year. You could honestly expand this if you wanted to do outside of just the whole year. If you want to do maybe every month, you have different goals. I find that the yearly works for me, but just like the whole point is that the system might be different for you. I definitely had a different system in mind too in the past, where areas are like areas of expertise. So like for me, it's content creation or swimming, that kind of thing. You have endeavors, so they're a bit bigger than projects, but smaller than phases, if you will. And so those endeavors are like, hey, this is something, a new idea or goal of mine that's towards this particular phase, but not necessarily a project, if you will. Sprints are like the project management sprints. They're just short form, guess you could say projects in this case, but they're very short projects and they're very, very efficient. You want to get it done as quick as possible. Whereas projects may take a little bit longer. And you have phases, which are, again, phases down here. Projects are along the lines of just wider project notes, link to your task database, and then here's the project workspace you can mess around with for your own little dashboard. And then the phases. So for me, you can even see some of the leftovers here, honestly. I have the Modular Degree was my first phase. I wanted to get that template out to the world, and now that I have this, the Modular Degree and the PIOS are very interconnected, so this particular video, honestly, is the last thing I'm going to be doing for a while for this phase. And the Notion is kind of its own phase, so it's being a Notion creator is its own phase. So there's overlap, and I'm going to be doing more content around the PIOS for now. But when it comes to the Modular Degree, maybe not so much besides like a course. And so now I'm going to focus more on the next phase. Ironically, the little circle there was talking about the PolyInContent. I was trying to focus on creating my PolyInContent series because I don't want to go too much on a tangent here, but it's kind of cool. I created this PolyInContent series, a video, blog post, and podcast. Every episode is all 3 of these, because I wanted to reach as many people as possible in as many formats as possible. Because some people like to read, some people like to watch. If you're listening in right now, I'm using my hand gestures to kind of show that enthusiasm. And so people like to hear, like while they're working or walking. People like to watch when they have a moment to spare. People like to read because they can read fast. And so there's different formats for people to absorb. And that was the point. And I had a lot of different topics, particularly leading into these phases, that I wanted to sow the seeds for. So for example, I started writing a little bit about swimming way a while back before I started my swimming newsletter. I wanted it to be like, I didn't want people to be like, okay, why is he doing this now? He has no history of doing this. I wanted to sow the seeds over time, even if it's only like one episode per quarter or something like that around this particular topic. There were some mini series as well. I mean, they still are, but I haven't got around to them yet. Some around the 4 pillars, some around Ikigai, some of them around building computer or swimming. And so that way I could have a series based around that topic. And then when I'm actually ready to start that phase, I have some history behind it that I can link back to and show people, hey, I was talking about this in the past. And so you're planning these phases ahead of time. And these are the things that you might be like, okay, eventually I want to become a music artist. I do too. Well, you need to start writing some songs. You need to start coming up with ideas. You can do that now. You don't have to necessarily start that phase, but you can start sowing the seeds. And that's more personal. That's more of your journaling per se. But I also have written some blog posts around music, so I can start building knowledge base or credibility in that space from that front. All right, I'm going to end this from here because otherwise I'm going to keep going on a tangent. Let me know if you want me to make a video just on that as well, though. This is another area where you probably would want to make your own template for, but because honestly, the template I made here was kind of rudimentary. And I thought maybe you could just make these into different templates for a database, and that would probably be an easy way to do it. I had some templates I had downloaded from other creators, but I didn't want to share their stuff without permission or anything like that. So honestly, this is a good section for you to take other people's templates and put it into this one. My system's more holistic, whereas their systems were a bit more specific. Now here's where another big one is that I spent a lot of time on. The Resonance inbox, formerly known as Resonance Calendar. Thanks Ali Abdal for that idea. He probably found it from someone else too, I don't remember, but this idea of keeping track of all the different things you are collecting. So all your bookmarks, Git Pocket stuff, screw those platforms, screw the inbuilt bookmarks of your browser. You can't organize them, you can't find them very easily, even when you search in the bookmark section. And then Git Pocket has maybe one tag you can add to it. It's very frustrating, very inefficient. And so what I ended up doing was using the Notion web clipper, which you would just use up here. I don't think I have it installed on Chrome, but I have it on Firefox. You just clip it, you choose which database, which will be this Resonant inbox, right? And then all your links come into here. You can tag them in any way you want. I don't have any tags in the template because I figured everyone is going to have your own template. You have your own different tracking. I kind of got rid of my own stuff too. Like sometimes I wanted to have summarized. So I have another step next to in progress where it says summarized. Or have you made content around it? That kind of thing. And then you have the link. The cool thing about it is it automatically inputs the URL and name. And then for most articles too, it'll put the article in this database as well. This whole feature is I freaking love it. Every line of the database is its own document. And that was one of the saving graces for me when I came to this system. All right, next. We have the Modular Degree template. And so I spent a lot of time, some other videos on this, but I'll kind of go over this real quick. You have your master database, which are all your courses, articles, links, whatever you find. This is separate from the Resonance inbox. I was wondering if there should have been a way for me to combine them, to be honest. And so down the line, I might end up merging them. But this system I found to be amazing because I ended up collecting over 400 courses, and I've trimmed it down since then, but that was a lot of courses, and trying to organize them into different semesters, that kind of thing, and I wasn't even accounting for videos, podcasts, and blog posts. I have all that time. So eventually, as much as I sat there and learned from hundreds of tabs. I would have hundreds of tabs open from videos and blog posts and podcasts, learning about certain topics, whether it was polymathy or podcasting or content creation, and yet I wasn't keeping track of them. And so now I can't go back to a lot of those that I found that were good, unless I save them in the Resonance inbox. And then let's say you start collecting a lot of these, right? This whole database is going to get cluttered really fast, and it's going to start getting in your way. So what you do is, you do have them organized by semesters, so I don't want to skip over that too much, but that's kind of your own deal. You could say semesters or sprints or projects, whatever particular way you want to, terminology, taxonomy, you want to organize it in, that's up to you. You could even do semesters and another taxonomy if you really wanted to, like break up the semesters into separate chunks. But here's where I wanted to get to. each one of these different sections here is a different view of that database. Only articles, or only courses, or only audiobooks. And that helps you quite a lot to just distill like, hey, I have enough time for just one article before I have to go to work. You can go in there and read one. So much more efficient. The next thing would be the output. And so I'm just going to kind of skip to here because this right here just leads to this database. Honestly, this particular page, I'm curious to see what people come up with. And I want to mention this because I would have different views. Like I would have the residence inbox here, maybe, or I would have my content system here, something like that. But for the most part, it's one of those things where having the views here kind of defeats the purpose of having this a separate page, but it also makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to go into that page if you're really worried about it taking a long time. I'm just curious what you guys come up with. You have your written post, your audio, your video, speaking engagement, courses, and these are just published archives, like the main archives. Different tools. I actually linked out to a special system. I created a database of amazing tools that I only released for my content repurposing newsletter. But when you get this system, you actually get access to it as well. And then the bullet journal system. Honestly, there's other people who made way better bullet journal templates. Duplicate theirs, replace mine, boom. Content production, on the other hand, I think mine is probably superior. Let's see. Let's open this up all the way. And so you have all these different tabs here, but you really only have to worry about a few of them. I have different links too. I wish this was, I don't know why the links are separated like that. But you have different pictures and links. And so one thing you got to keep in track of, you have your video, your audio, your written links right here, publish date, due date, status, content type, and then you have different images as well. Because you might have a thumbnail for YouTube. You might also want one for Pinterest, and you want one for Instagram, and then sometimes you want to do a screenshot. So I have different sections here for that as well. But honestly, you can, in different views, you can actually just get rid of those particular columns if you wanted to. Just hide them, and then just focus on what you need. Okie dokie, let's get on to the next level. Tasks and time blocking. Okay, so it seems like this one's kind of halfway. I made a system here, not really sure exactly how well this will help some people, but for me, it helped out a little bit to kind of organize my thoughts. And so you can have like this big, let me open this up, follow my own advice here. So you have your entire just week ahead of time here. You check your email, you have deep work at this time of day. I think in the afternoon I had another section of deep work, but I figured some people might have different schedules, so I just kind of left this whole section blank here. And you want some decompression, no phone, that way you can actually get to sleep. I go to sleep around midnight, maybe 1 a.m., so this is where I wanted to start decompressing. And then you have different task systems, and I think this might be similar to some other people's databases, but yeah, I guess I think too similar, so I deleted it. But yeah, you can use this different toggles here, insert database, change the views, use that system there. So this one's halfway put together, but you would probably want to input someone else's system with mine. Other than that, I really don't want to drag on and on and on. So what the whole point of this system is to organize every layer of your life together and have an interconnected system as well. So different layers will connect to other layers as well. Even if you don't think you need a system, then you probably do need one more than most. The people who think that, oh, I'm okay, I don't need any help, I don't need any systems, are usually the ones who obviously need it more than most, because if they think they're fine, then they probably are missing a lot of things and they don't realize they're missing it. Like the old saying goes, you don't know what you don't know. And so you don't know what you're missing either, too. And so it's one of those things where at this point, you want to live your life, whether it's polymathic or specialist, it doesn't matter, but living a polymathic life especially is not easy. And by having a life system that helps you keep it all organized, it keeps you more together, keeps you more cohesive as a person. And if you want to download this template, I'll leave the link in the blog post at the end. I don't want to leave it on YouTube per se, because at this point it's still in beta. I want people who are actually interested in the system right now to be downloading it. It is a paid template, only $49, which is cheaper than most other templates out there. But again, I understand that some people can't afford that. If that's the case, talk to me directly. Maybe we can work something out. But for the most part, This was a system I spent years developing, and it seems very simple, and I'm sure many people could take this video and just copy it, just from visuals, right? That's the point of Notion. Notion's so simple, you can just do that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of intricate details to the system that I probably didn't go over everything too. And so it's one of those things where it's much easier just to duplicate this template, pay for the fee, and eventually I'll make a course as well that the fee also covers for. If you find that this is useful, leave a comment. Otherwise, let me know, and so I can find ways to make it more useful. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading the blog post as well, and have a good day.